Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is Prep Matters bi-weekly town hall. We're glad to have you here tonight, and we're joined by an especially exciting trio of panelists. These are current college students who have recently entered their second year of undergraduate education. And with so many questions about college admissions, campus life, navigating higher education, it's understandable that we seek answers from college professionals, but it's equally useful and perhaps a bit more interesting to hear about what's going on from the students themselves, which is why we invited our panelists to speak with us tonight. I will ask our guests to touch on an array of topics tonight, and if you wish that we delve a bit more deeply into any of these topics, or if you have questions about other topics, feel free to use the question and answer feature available to you. If you see a question you like, you can upvote it to increase the chances that we get to it this evening. And of course, if you want to follow up with questions that we don't get to tonight or that occur to you later, just email us at edplanning@prepmatters.com. You can also tweet at us at prepmatters. And with that, let me introduce our panelists. I've asked each of them to open up tonight with a comment about something they just love about being a college student, or especially appreciate about their particular school. So we're going to hear that at the top of this webinar. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. First, let me introduce you. Andrew Stevens graduated from Sidwell Friends School in DC. He studies political science at Haverford College, located just outside Philadelphia, where he also plays club soccer. Andrew, what do you love about college?
It's a great question. I'd say that probably the best thing about college is the freedom that you have to make your own decisions and have complete and total control over what's going to happen that day, whether you're going to study, whether you're going to do something else. And at the end of the day, you have to do what needs to be done to get through your education and also have fun at the same time. And it's all up to you. You get to choose how you do it.
That touches on something I tell students when they're transitioning from middle school to high school. And then of course, when they're transitioning from high school to college, I say, oh my gosh, you're gonna love high school because you get so much more freedom. And then it's almost like Plato's allegory of the cave. You don't realize the truth of the freedom you can have until you get to college and you see, oh, what the kind of freedom that you can have. And then wait until post-undergraduate years, you'll see yet another stage of freedom available to you. Our next panelist is Azer Khan. He attended Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda, Maryland, and just entered his sophomore year at the College of William & Mary. He majors in history and government and is a member of William & Mary's squash team, the International Relations Club, and the Young Democratic Socialists. Most recently, he had the pleasure of working as a fall 2020 orientation aide to help new students transition to William & Mary. So we'll definitely want to hear more about that this evening. Azer, tell us what you love about college.
Yeah, again, great question. I definitely think one of my favorite parts about my college, but I think college in general, is just all the tradition that all these colleges have and all the little things that we get to do. Like William & Mary has this thing called convocation, right? As we go into right as you start your freshman year, you walk through our oldest building and on campus, and then you go and you're met by all the students and you high five all of them as you walk down. Obviously that couldn't happen this year in the same way because, can't high five a bunch of students, but all those different traditions are definitely something that I really, really love about my college experience.
Thank you, Azer. And our next panelist, Christina Nordvie, joins us tonight. She's a graduate of National Cathedral School, which is where she became increasingly interested in politics and international relations. And this is probably in part what encouraged her to apply to Georgetown's School of Foreign Service, which is where she studies international politics now. And at Georgetown, I think she's further honing her diplomacy skills by being a part of Model UN. She also joined a sorority. Christina, what's so awesome about being a college student at Georgetown?
I would say for me, it's definitely the diversity of classes. I mean, this semester I'm taking both criminology and then a class just called Made in Italy, and it all talks about the history of fashion, the history of Italian food. So yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of options and kind of goes hand in hand with the freedom. You can really choose, and then again, really neither one of those are super connected to international relations, but it's nice to broaden your experiences like that.
Well, I appreciate those answers, and I think it's just a great way to start the conversation with something that's awesome and wonderful when so much is going around the world that doesn't feel awesome and wonderful. And it's a helpful reminder for all of us to have something to look forward to and to work hard for. You three have a distinctive experience of having, you attended college on the planet we used to live on, and now you're going into your second year of college on the planet we live on now. And I find that it's a really interesting experience that we can dig into a little bit tonight. And so I want to make sure that we hear about your freshman year from college, but also we're definitely going to talk about what you've experienced so far. And so I want to start by asking you about expectations that you had about college before you ever stepped foot on campus. I remember when I was on my way to college, I had a summer job, and I was working with a coworker who was 1 year older. And so I had not gone to college, and she had just come back from her first year of college. And I pelted her with a million questions every day at her summer job. And I asked, even the most, probably to her, really annoying questions about, should I bring a backpack? Do college students wear backpacks? I mean, I was so excited, but I was also so nervous because I just didn't know what to expect. So what I want you to think about for this next question, and Christina, I'll start with you. What is something that you expected and it either didn't happen that way at all or happened much differently than you expected?
Well, I would say for me, throughout my educational career, I guess you could say, I've always gone to really small schools. So NCS was definitely the biggest school I went to, and our graduating class had 90 kids in it maybe. So when I was going to Georgetown, because it is a big school, I was kind of expecting to get lost in the crowd there a little bit. But I have to say that really doesn't happen. You really get to meet a lot of people, and just passing people in the hallways and stuff. You'll always see someone whether it's someone else in a different grade or even a graduate student. I think it's really easy to get to know people and find your people, as well as just, like I said earlier, finding people who are very different from you, but who contribute to your college experience. So I'd say.
And is it fair to say that the division of grades is less apparent in college compared to high school? Definitely. So it creates, I'm seeing nods everywhere. It creates a little bit more of a community overall. Azraf, Andrew, I'd love to hear from both of you on this question. What is something that you expected?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to add on to that. I think the one main expectation I had is that the college would, that there would be more people that had the same reputation, I guess, as the college had. So if it's a party school, I thought there'd be just more party people. I thought it wasn't like that. I thought it would be harder to find people who didn't fit, the image of the college. And I think what's kind of funny about that is there's so many people that feel that way who are actually just different that end up at the college. So like I said, you're going to find people who think like you, enjoy the same things as you, no matter where you go, as long as you just put the effort in and, really just do things that you enjoy. So yeah.
I really appreciate that answer because it speaks to what is easy to do as students and families, parents too, are looking at colleges, researching colleges, letting the stereotype, the generalization of that college define how they view the college, the community, a particular student who comes from that college. And as both of you have said, you're going to find all sorts of people, even as a school as small as Haverford, which is on the smaller side. Azraf?
Yeah, kind of similarly, I think what surprised me most about college was the way that you don't only see a lot of people who are different than either what the school's reputation is or what you think they're going to be, but I think it's also easier to be able to hang out with those kind of people too, and you can have multiple groups of different kinds of people that you can be friends with. I think it's a lot easier than it is in high school to kind of not only meet different people like that, but also have specific groups and friends through clubs or through classes or any of these ways where you actually get to spend time with those people as well as meeting them too on the fringes.
Well, thank you again. One thing that none of you expected was this pandemic that's impacting everything, including our colleges. And each of you are going to attending institutions that have a distinctive reopening plan. And I'd like to just describe what, from the website and from what I know talking to admissions, is the reopening plan for your school. But I'd like to hear from each of you, what has your experience been in terms of college communication about that plan throughout the summer up into now, and what you are experiencing today, whether there's an orientation that's been virtual, whether you know that you're going to be on campus perhaps as early as next week or maybe later. And let's start with Haverford. I believe classes are going to start next week, right, Andrew, on September 8th, and they're anticipating a mix of remote and in person. All classes will be available remotely, but they will endeavor to have that option for in person, and that they're not going to return after Thanksgiving. They're going to finish out at least the fall term remotely. There will be classes after Thanksgiving, but you will finish those out remotely. Is that still your understanding? And can you talk a little bit about what it's like gearing up for the year?
Yeah, so that is still what it's like. They've been sending, emails every week, trying to give us more information, detailing plans and guidelines and stuff like that. It's still, even with that information, it's still kind of hectic because some of these professors, they have their own plans for what they want to do for classes, and they want to keep their options open as well. So even if, you want to know more information sooner, some of them are still waiting till the last minute to, give that information on how they're going to run their class. And at the same time, we still have to be prepared to, leave at any point, which is definitely a big thing. And we also have Bryn Mawr, and who we're going to reopen with, since Haverford is a part of we call it a trico. It's with Swarthmore, Bryn Mawr, and Haverford, but we're gonna keep it within Bryn Mawr and Haverford because they're really close together. But yeah, just trying to, just prepare for school in the normal way I would, and just pack, what I need and not anything more.
That's a great reminder that I think a lot of college students realize that for many colleges and universities, there isn't a departmental guide or a school-wide policy that all professors have to abide by, to the extent that maybe at high school they did. So you have to calibrate per professor, and as I like to say, you learn the class, you also learn the teacher, and maybe you have to do that a little bit more, even more now than before. So Georgetown, Christina, has for a while now committed to fully remote for at least the first semester. What has your experience been?
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's been kind of confusing. We've heard a lot, like for a while there, the freshmen were gonna come back on campus, and then that obviously didn't happen. As of right now, we haven't really heard anything new. I think we're just sticking with like the entire semester is gonna be online. But like I would have to say that I know a lot of people who like decide to rent like or sublease apartments and stuff like around campus. So I mean, there's still like a big like part of the Georgetown community here in DC, which I think is nice, especially because I know a lot of freshmen who actually decided to come into DC area and like, socially distance, but like they're still like meeting new people, which I think is really cool. I'm kind of lucky in that sense because I don't really have to like deal with the whole, out of state thing just because I live like 15 minutes away from campus. But I don't know, I think so far it's been pretty consistent. We're gonna hope that, things get better and we can actually go back on campus next semester.
The language Georgetown uses is as soon as health conditions permit, which is perhaps frustratingly vague, but also maybe the most honest announcement, because we're all in a wait and see moment, and whatever is announced could change at any given day. Azraf, at William and Mary, the phrase they use is a condensed and in-person fall. So it's an early opening. They're shifting to 3 semesters, I think, so fall, spring, and summer to provide a little flexibility. And they've begun early, but they're also going to end early before Thanksgiving. You will be done with the semester, and as I understand it, you perhaps have already started, but nothing will be in person until after Labor Day.
Yeah. Okay. So William and Mary had so what we were doing originally was we were starting early, and that all of our classes have started, and they started a couple weeks ago. But in-person classes don't start till Labor Day, but they pushed back returning students coming onto campus until Labor Day. So right now it's only freshmen on campus and people who did orientation. So I'm in my dorm by myself because none of the other sophomores or juniors or seniors are here other than the orientation people. So it's been a time because we've had I think it was a couple, 2 or 3 days before people were supposed to move in. They pushed back move in. So it's been a little bit chaotic, but I think that we're getting to the point where the returning students will come back and we're supposed to have a semester, which is supposed to be as normal as possible. But I will say that when freshmen were on campus, and they have been on campus for the past 2 or 3 weeks, it's been pretty good. We don't have any official cases, I don't believe. So that's been pretty solid so far.
Well, that's a helpful transition to the next topic I want to discuss, which is just activities. And so, Azer, you helped transition new students this fall. You just described a little bit about that. And this is up for anyone. Christina, Model UN, is that happening? Andrew, club soccer, what's going on? And you can just jump at this question. Can you talk about activities that can still happen? Is everything on hold? Is there a policy?
Yeah, okay. I'll go again, I guess. Okay, so basically during orientation, what we were doing was for our orientation events, we did half in person, half over Zoom. So we would have people all in one room, but they'd all be watching one Zoom. So so that also gave the option for people who didn't want to come to do the same event, but it also had the option of people who wanted to be in person could be too. So I think it was it was pretty effective. Obviously there's some technical difficulties with muting and sound, but once you figure that out, it works fine. So I think there is a way for clubs to technically meet in person with small groups. But also we have a lot of restrictions on how many people can move in. So most of my clubs, I believe, are meeting over Zoom so far, but people can too.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think, well, because Georgetown's completely online, so yeah, all of our clubs so far have been on Zoom, which, it's worked. It's been kind of interesting, especially with the breakout rooms and stuff like that. It does kind of mimic a little bit what's how club fairs and stuff like that actually happen. I think, well, especially with my sorority, we have our recruitment is going to be online, which is all on Zoom, which will be super interesting to see. We're having workshops now. It's gonna be a 3-day thing. Not entirely sure what I'm gonna expect, but I think that a lot of the clubs on campus are still trying to keep things going. And even if there's this one club that I think is super interesting, and they bring speakers on campus and stuff. So now they've just all transitioned that into Zoom, and they're doing workshops and things like that. So I don't know. I think it's working so far, but we haven't really gotten to the point in the year where I can give a good definite answer, especially with Model UN, because the conferences and stuff like that are, being there in person is so integral to it. So
yeah. School hasn't started for us yet, so I can just only say what I anticipate happening, but I'm pretty sure, just Christina and Azer said, they're clubs are going to just try to keep going, probably through Zoom or whatever they're allowed to do in person, just following guidelines in terms of staying safe. Yeah, it's just, I think they're just going to try to do whatever they can do to keep clubs going. Yeah.
And in terms of campus life, it looks like Azraf, you're in a dorm right now. Christina, you grew up not far from your college, so it looks like maybe you're at home right now.
Yeah,
And
I'm at
then,
home.
and then Andrew, what's going to go on for housing at Haverford for you?
Well, I think we're fortunate that we do have a relatively small school, and we have a lot of single person housing. So no one's going to have a roommate. I think 80% of people are coming back. So yeah, everyone's going to be in single rooms. Yeah, that's how housing going to look. That's what I'm going to be in. Yeah.
So you'll be on campus in a single
Yeah.
dorm room. Yep. And then Azraf and Christina, can you speak to any of the rules or new policies about housing that you've heard at your schools?
Well, for us, like I said, there are a few people who are living in the Georgetown area. That being said, I'm not entirely sure if that follows what Georgetown, like the Georgetown guidelines that we got sent. Like for example, we got this email and it was like because Georgetown, like there's like a whole cooperation with like the neighborhoods and stuff like that, and like the residents in the neighborhoods surrounding Georgetown. So we had to sign this contract that basically said that we wouldn't go like into Burleith or into like onto M Street and stuff. But I'm not entirely sure. I think that's just mostly like they had to do it kind of thing. But yeah, apart from that, there are a few people who are on campus and kind of like what Andrew said are doing like the no roommates thing. But that like you had to go through a whole process, and you had to contact the college, and like you had to get like your parents involved and stuff like that. But apart from that, it's pretty much like I would say Georgetown's pretty bare right now.
Anything to add, Azraf?
So for how we're like living in our dorms, just like we have roommates, so all the doubles are staying as doubles, but like in the common spaces, we have to do like social distancing and wear masks. So if you're not in your room, you have to basically be like, what's it called? You have to be distancing and wearing a mask. And also we aren't having guests that are allowed in other people's dorms. So you can only go into the dorm that you are living in. So you can't like have friends from other dorms hang out.
Let's stick with the campus life category for a little bit, and then we will move on to some other categories, including your application process to actually be admitted to these schools. What is your experience so far? I know you are just starting the school year, or maybe it hasn't quite started yet. Or what do you anticipate, or maybe what have you heard from administration about the social aspect of college? We've seen at other colleges and universities that have been open for a while, the stories of COVID parties or mass gatherings that higher ed administration has denounced. Has there been any talk about that, or chastising already, or warning about how to socialize on a college campus?
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten emails already. I'm not even on campus yet. Because we do have people on campus. The freshmen are there, and also there were some early arrivals. I don't know exactly what the process was to be an early arrival, but there are people on campus. And we already got emails already from administrators saying, we've heard rumors about, off-campus parties and, the rest. And it's just, they're basically saying, like, if this happens, if we can't be safe, like, we're just going to go home. And, they had a bunch of things that we had to sign, agreements, stuff like that, to, try to obviously, tie us to complying to what they're saying, their safety guidelines. But obviously it's extremely difficult for them to make sure that these things happen. So they have to send emails out as deterrence and just, create these guidelines and say, if this happens, we're just done. And yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard, thankfully I haven't really heard anything regarding like parties and stuff like that, but I know that the people who are like in the Georgetown area, they can go in and get tests. I don't know, that was a new thing that Georgetown just emailed about. You can get like regular tests just to like make sure that like, if you're on campus, you're not going to pass it to other people. I think it's kind of weird because there are a lot of international kids at Georgetown. So a lot of people are like just not like even in the US. So yeah, we haven't really had the problem with like a lot of gatherings or possible gatherings at all. Just good.
We our first weekend that freshmen were here, there was like a really like harshly worded email that was sent out to everybody. They were like, it was basically the same, like we've heard like people talking about parties, like we're just gonna go home. And we also have this thing called a party patrol, which is basically like cops just like outside our like dorms and stuff. I'm not sure how that's progressed, but I just know that there was like pretty big response to that. Take it as you will, but like they're taking it very seriously of like what's actually happening. Yeah.
Well, if you learn more about the party patrol, Azraf, please email me a description. That is an amazing phrase, and it sounds like something you want to be a part of, but maybe not. So there's with all, you know, obviously with all of this COVID stuff that's impacting every part of life. It's impacting not just your campus lives, but the college application process. You squeaked in right before, so you had a pretty standard college admissions process. But I'd like to know, and we're going to get into your particular college admissions processes, but one concern that a lot of families and students have right now is talks of students deferring or taking a gap year, or just taking a break and coming back later, and they're wondering if students who have already been admitted to the university are taking a gap year and coming a year later, they're taking up, quote unquote, they're taking up a spot that could have been mine. Is that going to impact my chances for admissions? And so I'm not going to ask you whether that's the case in terms of admissions, but I'd like to hear from you. Do you know friends, peers, other students who have said, yeah, you know what, I'm just not coming back, or I'm taking a year break, or I'm deferring?
Yeah, I do. I know people across all the grades have said they're not coming back. Either they just don't think it'll be enjoyable, they don't want to like end their senior year like that, or they're athletes, they want to keep a year of eligibility. I'm sure a lot of high school seniors this year are taking gap years. There's just a lot of people. There are definitely a lot of people who are taking years off. So yeah, it just depends on, you just, I guess, make the decision based off of your own personal reasons, what you think is best for yourself in the situation, and yeah, just make the decision based off that.
Did any of you consider taking a gap year this year?
No, I didn't personally. I can't really think of anything else I would do with my time. Just, I even took some classes over like the summer break just because, we had plans to do some more things, and like, I was thinking about like internships and stuff like that, but obviously that didn't pan out. I actually don't think I know anyone, at least at Georgetown, I don't think I know anyone who's taking a year off, but I know people were talking about it, especially, kind of questioning like the quality of like online classes versus those of like in-person classes, and whether they're going to be getting like, I don't know, the same experiences they would be. But I think at the end of the day, at least most people I know, they decided just to, stay at Georgetown, kind of take the semester as it is, do their best. I know some people actually have like kind of slowed down with their classes. Like they're like part-time students now. And I think I know a few people who are like working and like doing internships if like, their state or their hometown allows that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely know like a few people who are taking the year off, or yeah, the year off. One person's like having an internship with like a congressman or something. But I think a lot more freshmen are taking the year off that I know. But I also think that like the more people like I know who are in college currently are just taking the year from home instead of like coming to campus. That's like a pretty big, I'd say like it's a sizable amount of people, and like a lot of my friends are just like staying at home and taking the semester. I didn't really consider it myself. Like I considered it myself, but I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think I would enjoy so much time off, but it's definitely something that like, if you're interested in, like you should do. Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your application process. So when you were in high school, looking at colleges, and I'd like to go back to the same kind of question I opened up the webinar with, is what did you expect that process to be like? And what is perhaps one piece that did not happen the way you expected? And by that question, I mean, perhaps there was a part of the application process that you thought was going to be really difficult or really significant, and it turned out not to be that bad, or vice versa, right? Oh, that's not going to be easy. Ooh, that took a lot more planning and energy than I realized, or any part of your experience. And I'll just kind of start with Christina, if you're ready to answer that question. Was there anything that didn't meet your expectations through that process that you were surprised by?
I think one thing that kind of surprised me was just like the notion, like you start applying to colleges and you're always thinking about like, rank and like acceptance rates and stuff like that. And like, you can't really help it. And it was like a big thing for us. Like we had to like, had our matches, you had our reach, you had our likelies. And I think that you shouldn't kind of discount a university just because you think that it might be like a little too, like, the reach might be a little too far. I mean, when I was applying, there were a lot of schools that, just like based on stats and stuff, were like likelies, and did not get accepted, but then like for me, Georgetown, like it was my top choice, like SFS, so I really wanted to go. And like, with Jeff, like there were a few times we were talking about it. We were like, hey, college and then maybe going into the SFS. But I just decided to like stick with it. And, I got in and I really wasn't expecting it. Just like, the stats match, but you never really know. And it was the last college I heard from. So like, it was, definitely kind of nerve wracking. But I would just say that like, if you have the time and if you like the school, like despite, you don't really have to like listen to all these like notions and ideas that have been presented in front of you. Just go for it. It all works out in the end. That's what I will say. Like there are a lot of people I know who didn't get into their dream schools and ended up at a university that like they liked, they didn't love, and now they're just having like the absolute best time. They're studying what they want to study. They have amazing friends. And I think that, and even if that doesn't happen, there's like, I know a lot of people who really like their colleges and then went there, didn't really feel, I can't really say I know them, like the vibe, and are transferring. And now they're having a great time, in their new colleges too. And they still have their friends from their first year and stuff like that. So I would just say that like, once you're in, you kind of like all that stress goes away. But I would say don't let that like stop you from, trying to do something that you really want to do. Yeah.
I'm gonna when it's time to end with the question, what's some advice you'd like to hand out to the people listening, the students and parents listening? And that's great advice, Christina. So you're gonna have to think of another piece of advice when it's time to come to that. And you bring up a really important part of understanding college admissions, is that colleges don't fall into nice, neat little buckets of safety, target, reach, always, right? There's a lot of confounding variables and unpredictability and arbitrary nature to the admissions process. And so you kind of just have to, at some point, close your eyes and jump and just see what happens. Azraf, do you want to go next?
Sure. I definitely think the thing that I was surprised with the most was by the end, like how many colleges I ended up like really like liking. Like I didn't really know that many colleges before I started my admissions process, but then by the end, I was like, wow, there are a lot of colleges that like if I happen to get into, I would be totally down with going to. And I think that was like really reassuring, just because like when you go on your like, I don't know, because I feel like also when we talk about college admissions, you often hear about like that story where like I went to a college, I toured it, and it was the perfect place for me, and then I never thought about it again, and I went there. But like that, although I really like the college that I went to, it was my top choice too, but like I don't think that moment like ever really happened for me. And I think that a lot of like the colleges that I ended up applying to, I would have really, really enjoyed. And I think that that was not something I was expecting at the beginning, but it was definitely positively surprised.
There are, I think, more than 2,500 four-year institutions in this country, and there are, maybe 200 to 300 schools that anyone regularly talks about. That's still 200 to 300 schools, and there are so many options out there, and so there's a place for everyone. Andrew?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there that I just heard that I definitely agree with. I'd say that I think the thing I'll choose to focus on is that you really, in addition to, I guess, being surprised by how many places that you could like, I would also say that you never know, like, whether until you go there, you don't actually know whether you're going to like it or not. You can read as many things as you want, but there's still so many different factors that you don't know about that will influence whether you enjoy the place or not. Um, like Christina, I know people who've transferred, people who thought that they got into the school they always wanted to be at, and they transferred after their freshman year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just evidence that shows that you don't actually know what you're really getting into until you show up. I mean, I'd had a different college process, I guess, than Azer and Christina. I didn't get into my top place at all, but it was, you create a list for a reason. You have a bunch of options that you feel like you could be happy at. And then once you get there, you make the best of it. And, I'm happy. I feel like I made a great decision. But yeah, you really just never know. And you just got to keep an open mind.
I'm totally stealing that from you, Andrew. I love that. You create a list for a reason. I love that. That's exactly right. So as you were going through this process, I think parents would really like to hear this part. What is something that your parents did that was really helpful, or if you're comfortable, that was really not helpful as you were moving through this process? And another way you could think about this question is, what advice would you have for parents as they're trying to help, or maybe they need to try not to help their students as they're going through this process? Andrew, I'm going to start with you.
All right. I think the unhelpful thing, I don't know. It's not like, I don't know if it's like concretely unhelpful, but you're going through the college application process, and you still have a lot of things that you're worried about that have nothing to do with college as a student. So to be reminded constantly to have to go to do things to prep for tests and write essays and all that stuff, it's helpful in a sense, but just remember that the student has a whole bunch of other issues that they're worried about and can be worried about at any moment. I say the helpful thing, it's actually my dad created like a table that had a bunch of schools on it. And we had, so like on the Y column, had a bunch of schools. X column, it had basically all my interests. And we went through each school and looked to see if they had these things and, how good of a fit it was. And what's helpful when looking at that is that your top school like still doesn't have all the things that you enjoy or like. And the school that you thought you didn't really like at all may have a bunch of things that you like. So if you actually like break down your interests, you'll be able to see more clearly what schools might be a good fit that you're just, I guess sleeping on. What was the last question you said?
It was any part of that you could answer. I think that was great. I actually don't remember the last part of it. That was great. That was really helpful, Andrew. Christina, you're unmuted. Do you want to go for it?
Sure. Let's see. I would say that both of my parents, okay, I don't really know if Jeff will agree, but in my point of view, so I'm an only child, and you know, like no one else has really gone through the college process. My mom's from El Salvador, so she went to undergrad in El Salvador. My dad, like, love him, but it's been a while, you know. So I think, you know, it was a very new experience for all of us. But I will say they did give me a lot of freedom when it came to like choosing my colleges and, you know, picking ones that, like, nobody wants their kids to like go, you know, halfway across the world to go to college or anything, you know, but they still like let me look at like international schools, and they're very supportive. So I would say just like really listening to what your kids want, and, you know, trying to talk to them about it. And like I really wanted to go to, like, you know, I was also looking at NYU, for example, and I love New York. You know, now I don't think that, like, as an 18-year-old going to New York by myself, like, you know, just to go to college was probably the smartest idea for me. But like my parents kind of talked to me about that in the beginning, and they really helped me like explore my options when it came to like, I don't know, like choosing what I wanted, but also what was fit for me. And I will say, so like I said earlier, Georgetown was my top school, and you know, you can apply early to Georgetown, and then they will like either defer you, or accept you. And I got deferred in the first round, and I don't know. I mean, it's obviously very sad, and like it hurts because you're like, I don't know what else I could have done. But they never really made me like feel as though I missed out on something, or like, you know, they were just like, okay, that's okay. If you didn't get in, that's fine. Like, you have a bunch of other colleges you can look at. And I think that was really helpful, just knowing that I really did have options, and that, like, my parents stood with me in what I wanted.
It occurs to me that it might be helpful for parents listening in. Our founder, Ned Johnson, founder of Prep Matters, along with Dr. Bill Stixrud, wrote a book called The Self-Driven Child, and they wrote an article that touches on that, the concepts in that book about how to help your child through the college admissions process. So in the chat, I included the link to that U.S. News and World Report article that touches on this very question. Azraf, do you have an answer for this?
Yeah, pretty much similar to Andrew and Christina, but I think that my parents didn't really have like a college that they wanted me to go to. Not that like they didn't care about where I went to college, but that they didn't have like one in mind, and they're like, you have to go there. So like no time in the process, but they like pushing me in one direction. I thought that was really nice. I also think that like, well, on like the same, well, kind of, but that they also like were like, you actually have to do your college applications, which like are definitely like when you're a senior in high school, like you have a lot of other things that you're thinking about all the time, because like you want to be with your friends, you want to do your schoolwork, you need to do all this like really important stuff that seems really, really important at the time. And like it is, but also like you can sometimes also have to take a step back and like say that you have to actually finish your college applications and like not be too stressed about them and kind of like spread them out. So that was really helpful also, because my parents definitely did that. Not too much, but a little bit, which was helpful.
I think that's great advice for parents to listen to, and everyone's different, but I've worked with a lot of students, and I think a lot of students would relate to everything you're saying, especially if they're going through the process right now. What about now? How are parents helpful or not helpful as a college student, particularly in your first year? Is there anything that you would add if I were to adjust the question and say, you know, how they've been there for you in good ways, and how they've been there for you in perhaps ways that are not helpful, or is that even something that you've dealt with?
I will say, kind of funny, but they walk in when I'm in my class. It's really not helpful. They just love, you know, as parents do, just like walking into the kids' class, like rooms every once in a while. But I don't know. I think that like overall for me, you know, I'm on a very different schedule now. I get up a lot earlier than I was, you know, for the last like 6 months. I'm like living my own life, and they're just like separate from being with them all the time as like how it was, over the last like few months. And they've really like given me that space because like, especially if like I don't really know like if the audience, like a lot of them are like staying at home or, going to college. But if they're staying at home, I think that, giving kids their space to like pretend in a way that they're in, like, that they have like that freedom again, or they have that freedom for the first time. Like, we put the exercise bike in my room now. It doesn't look great. I don't really want it in here, but like, now it's kind of like my own space and I get to really do everything in here. I've got my kettle from college. So, it's kind of like living in a dorm, but now your parents are your roommates. It's fun. It's great. And the dogs. Oh, I have to say the dogs are, a great thing for them, my parents too. Just like bring them in the room every once in a while. Everyone else in my class, they love them. So
I think I read somewhere that like every dog has been adopted in the last 6 months. So yeah, people are finding some one wonderful times with their new pets.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Azraf or Andrew? Okay, if there isn't, I just wanted to give you an opportunity.
I think definitely just like kind of similar to what I said earlier about the like telling people to do their applications, but not too much. It's like similar, like always tell like I feel like I don't know, always tell like your student to like reach out or like always reach out to your to your kid, I guess, but not too much. So like they know that you're always there because like transitioning to college, whether it's in I don't know, like in this condition versus actually going to college, like it's both, it's always going to be like a big change. So like make sure that you're like still like a part of their lives so they kind of have that, but not too much. So because obviously college is really, really busy, especially at the beginning. I don't know, same kind of thing was really helpful for me at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add that I think the main thing to remember is that they aren't supposed to be home. Like they, as you've heard, like we want to be a college student even if we're at home. And you just have to recognize the dynamic between you and your student because it's different. It's different than high school. I would definitely say, check in on them, see how they're doing. But I would avoid the asking like, how's homework going? Like, are you have a test tomorrow? Like, don't do that. It'll probably just weigh on them more. And yeah, just, try to give them the space that they would have had in some sense. Yeah.
Well, and let's help parents feel a little at ease that you have other resources besides them. And could we shift the conversation again to at your universities, especially now, have you heard, whether it was your first year or maybe it's become a little more prominent because of everything that's going on in this world, about resources that are available to you in person or virtually in terms of mental health supports or actual physical and public health support? One concern I'm sure some parents would have is, my child goes off to a college, they're 18, and for example, HIPAA law means that they don't necessarily get to know if their kid is in the hospital, what's going on. So it might be worth parents listening for you to check into having your child waive HIPAA rights when they go off to college in any situation, but especially nowadays. Could you speak to what the university is offering in those terms?
Yeah, so I definitely think that like at least my school is really like they really make sure that you know about all the resources that exist on campus. We have our like massive health center, which is like probably our fanciest building at our school, which has like, it has like mental health resources, so like therapy. It has our actual like if you get sick, that's where you go, or like if you like I don't know if you break your leg. I don't actually know if that's what happens there, but something regarding actual physical health too. We also have like all the different resources for like other like addiction or anything of the sort. That all is basically what we do during orientation is we try to connect those students to those resources so that they're able to kind of by themselves be able to know that they're there, and then if they ever need them to be able to reach out to them. So that's what we like, that's like the point of William & Mary's orientation. So I think that they're very like open, and they really, really want students to know about all the stuff that exists. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the orientation at Haverford is kind of the same way. They make you aware of all the different support systems available to you, and they try to instill confidence in them. Yeah, I mean, there's health centers. They try to take good care of you. I'll say that. They definitely take good care of you. If I guess, you know, talking about being in a hospital, I mean, I don't have an experience with that. I don't really know what would happen in that situation. I hope your kid would call you or talk to you about that. But in terms of what the school could and should be doing, I think that schools are very aware of that, especially during a COVID situation where they know that students, they struggle with being separated from their friends, being isolated, especially to get into quarantine, telling us that if you're quarantined, you know, you'll still have, you know, professionals to talk to, people you can, you know, converse with, and talk about your issues, your problems, and what you're thinking, so that you're not alone. So yeah.
Yeah, we've had a lot of our counseling services are still going strong. I think, I mean, just in general, at least with Georgetown, we had, like, I've used our health services before. You know, I fell down my third, fourth month there, broke my tailbone. It's a great experience. But yeah, like, I think overall they always try to stay in touch with you, and like even now when like a lot of our, I mean, like our actual like health like resources are not really available for a lot of the students. We still get like periodical check-ins, and you know, our deans always contact us, and everyone just kind of wants to make sure that you're okay. So I will say that that's been really good.
I think that's great to know, and thank you for those answers. I'm sure it's helpful for both students and parents to know that they'll be taken care of, and that's part of what colleges and universities endeavor to do. It's not just about your intellectual development, but also your mental and physical safety. It's probably the right time of the evening for us to transition to the last question or request I have from each of you, which is if there's any more advice that you have for students or parents that you haven't had a chance to say yet, I'd love to hear it. And we had a question from the audience that we touched on a little bit, but maybe there's more that you'd like to say about this, is what advice do you have for high school students who, in terms of how they can manage their stress through this process in terms of college admissions, but also just, you know, life. And so anyone can just jump in on that question, and we'll hear from all three of you.
Yeah. I think that something I've definitely learned, especially over the last few months, I think when I was, you know, going through the college admission process, I had in my head the idea that I was going to be chill, laid back all the time, and you know, I was just going to go with whatever happens, even though I was obviously putting my best effort in to get into the places that I want to be at. I've just had this idea that, you know, I can't control everything, and that was definitely helpful. But during this quarantine period, with so many things that you really cannot control, I've kind of had to face how I would deal with that stress and anxiety more. And I think the two main things I would say is just doing things, finding things that you can enjoy no matter what. Things that people can't take away from you, that you just love to do, that can make you happy no matter what's going on. That's number one. And then number two is to not bottle it up, because a lot of people are feeling the same way as you, and it honestly really helps to talk about whatever you're feeling and going through, especially if you have been holding it in for a while. You'll feel a lot better. I can promise that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think what Andrew said was really important. It's definitely, I mean, obviously it's a really hard time right now. I would say, especially for the kids, like, if you guys are like, if people are transitioning into a new environment and they don't feel necessarily super comfortable talking to, like sharing their deepest, darkest secrets and like feelings with other people. I personally started journaling during quarantine, and I thought it's been, it's kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of weird, but it's been really nice to be able to like set out, everything that like I want to say to someone, but I just, I don't really want to like talk about it out loud. I think that's been super, super great with helping me deal with like the stress and stuff. I think that also if kids are on the computer, like I know my classes are basically all back to back, and it's true, you get a lot of like computer like fatigue. I think that also taking it like a step away, I went outside today and I just like stood in the backyard, and it was great. It was kind of like a nice moment to myself after like just class and class and class, or like computer. So I would say really just taking like the small moments to yourself. I mean, this is definitely like, it's still a busy time, but you get more time to yourself. So you get to like really kind of discover some more things that you probably might not have given like a traditional school year.
Yeah, that's kind of similar to what I was gonna say, was that make sure that you're taking breaks from doing just college applications. I think that something that I tried to do when I was doing it was that I didn't really try to let it interrupt anything that I wanted to do during my senior year. Like, I obviously set a time to do it, but like if I was gonna go to a debate tournament, but I didn't want to do, but I had college applications, like I'd try to like set aside time to do my debate or to do my college applications where it wouldn't interrupt anything else that I wanted to do. So like, don't let it like take over your life is basically my advice. Also, I think that college applications are like a really interesting thing to actually write, like to think about. I think that like you never get a chance to write about yourself in that same way. So I think that it's actually kind of interesting sometimes to like be able to make like a narrative and a story about yourself and like why you should be like admitted to a college. And like it's a really weird type of writing, but it's not one that I do basically ever. So I thought it was actually pretty interesting. So maybe you think about it like that could help too. I don't know.
It's an intensely introspective and reflective process, and all of that was just excellent advice. And thank you so much, each of you, for joining us today. We wish you the very best of luck with this new school year and the rest of your college career. Thank you all and the audience for joining us tonight. If you have found this town hall useful, you can join us again 2 weeks from tonight for our next town hall, which will be a college admissions panel. We're inviting Virginia Tech and Oberlin College to come and tell us, well, what's going on with college admissions, college campus, higher education at that point, because everything is changing day by day. If you would like to reach out to us with more questions or to learn more about how we might be able to help your students, feel free to email us at edplanning@prepmatters.com. To our panelists, I wish you the very best. Stay safe. To our audience, the same. Thanks again, and have a wonderful evening, everyone. Good night.